We're excited to announce that we're bringing back Sauna Camp 2.0 on March 20th from 2 to 8 p.m. We had this last year. We had 42 owners. This year, we're maxing out the capacity of the camp, which is going to be 60 people. We're going to have a wellness panel with some Everest summiters, as well as some Iron men and women to compete, and all about wellness and how they prioritize their health and wellness, not only in training, but in their lifestyles and in their business. And then we're going to have a 2 hour window of sauna and cold plunging in the lake, and then an amazing wood fired grill, Mediterranean style food at the end of that. So if you're interested, please head to curiousbuilder.com. Under retreats, you'll find everything there is about Sauna Camp on March 20th in Minnesota. You can do really great modern work, but it could also be very approachable, very grounded, and it was very well done architecturally, as you would imagine. It feels very nestled, very grounded, both from the color, but also the shapes. And when you're in the backyard, it's just like this really tranquil, quiet feeling. Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today is Thursday, and I've got a special episode for you today. I'm going to give you a recap of the 45 White Oak Tour. So most of you are probably aware of Nick Schiffer's build out in Boston. So Nick Schiffer, for those that don't know who he is one of my business partners at the Contractor Coalition Summit. I met him 3 years ago at the Contractor Coalition Summit in Nashville. And really, that group, I've spoken a lot about the Contractor Coalition and how much it's impacted me career-wise. And it just have had these great, meaningful relationships, with each person that's a part of it. We have our next one coming up here in Chicago that starts Friday and goes through Monday. So if you're listening to this episode and you're not there, it's too late. You already missed it. Unless you want to fly in on 12 hours notice. The next one will be in Denver in April. We'll talk more about that later. But the goal of this is Nick has been building this home. And a year ago, we were out there for the Boston Contractor Coalition in September. So it's been about 13, 14 months since we were out there. It was at rough end stage when we were there, and they're just finishing up now. They probably have, if I had to guess, probably 45, 60 days left of the home. I'm sure Nick would say 30, but looking at it, as we all know, those last 30 to 45 days, that's where all the magic happens. And so I wanted to come out, see where it's been. We were mic'd up and just kind of do a ride along. So Nick picked me up that morning, 5:15, and we went to the club, worked out as we both do, went to breakfast, and really just talked shop all day. So we're mic'd up. We headed to, and Motif Media followed us around. So we'll be doing a bunch of video content here in the weeks and months to come. We actually did a live podcast, or not live podcast. We did a recorded podcast in Nick's studio at the end of it. So that'll be a whole dedicated hour to just lessons learned, things that Nick has observed, things that he's reflected on, what the point of white oak is, all of these other things. What I wanted to do with this episode is I've been building for 21 years. I love building. I love architecture. I love design. But this home, there's just something different about the way that Nick has approached it that's left a big impact on our community. Not to draw too many comparisons, I have a home we're doing right now called Misa Hus, a whole home based around wellness. And he and I are actually giving a brand talk. He's speaking about 45 White Oak. I'm going to be speaking about Misa Hus. And we're going to kind of compare of like how a brand and how a home can sort of embody a brand. That was one of the questions I actually asked Nick on the podcast was, is 45 White Oak a house or a brand? And he said it's a house that reinforces his NS Builder brand. And I like that answer. By contrast, Misa Hus is a brand, the home itself. And so just little nuances as I was sort of trying to understand what made Nick tick and really the level of execution. I've been following his build on his Instagram page as well as his YouTube channel. He's got a massive following, like 150,000 followers on YouTube. He's pretty much, I think, top of his game in the country for what he does. And he's very, very talented. So to coin a term that Melissa Olent, one of my designers for Misa Hus, she often says moments of delight. So on the airplane ride back, I had a whole day riding along with Nick, and it was a rare treat. It was awesome for him to do. We had great conversations, both on and off the record, just chatting about life, business, family, all the things that he and I like to talk about. But what really left an impact on me was just sort of my jaw dropping just watching the level of execution that's at White Oak, it's super inspiring. And so I was bushed. I probably just wanted to take a nap or watch a movie on the way home, but I thought I'd better write down all these moments of delight so that I could do a podcast episode on them. So these aren't in any sort of order, but I've got probably 20 to 25 things that were really amazing details. I think it's just the little details. I'm sure I could find another 30, but on the airplane, these are the what hit me. So I'll start at the top. One is the siding. So the siding took 52 weeks, and it's an impressive siding. I don't know all the details. I didn't do a lot of research for this episode. I just wanted to say like what was top of mind. If you want to research what he's doing, he's done a ton of video series and content around this siding. It came from Europe, and maybe I should step back for a minute. This home has got a Danish design. Of Possible is the architect, and Vincent, the architect, and Nick have been in collaboration on this project for quite a while. It's going to be featured in a bunch of publications nationally as well as worldwide. Eventually, when it's done, probably not my place to share which ones they are at this point in time, but it's a game changer. So when we back to the siding. So the siding took 52 weeks to install. Incredible detail. Really, really cool. And what was really neat is on the inside, you'll see a ton of photos of Nick's home and in the renderings that he's done, but he's got like an inverted atrium. And so he actually was explaining how difficult it was. The siding is meant to obviously be a cladding on the outside and how they hung it. But on the inside, and this is not a term I was even familiar with, but they call it a bastard angle on a bastard hip roof, where you've got multiple angles intersecting. So cutting these angles are very difficult, but inside it's inverted. So the skylight is actually a smaller aperture, and it comes out and away. And it's upside down, so you couldn't hang the shingle how you normally would. And when they were asked about it early on, I love Nick's can-do attitude. He said, "We'll just have to figure it out." And so we walked through like how they did it, and it was incredible dedication to his team. So anyway, I'm just trying to think of like it takes us, most of our homes are probably 10 months to 16 months to build, but I'm just blown away that a house would take 52 weeks to side. And so I remember when Nick said he got his last invoice, and he was like, it was like a July 4th moment when he knew you didn't have to pay any more siding labor invoices. The other thing that was really this beautiful moment is like how subtle and grounded the home is. Nick's whole point was to do modern architecture in an area that is predominantly traditional, Cape Cod, all the things that you would envision, Martha's Vineyard, East Coast, Boston, that whole thing. But just to show like you can do really great modern work, but it could also be very approachable, very grounded. And the home site is actually a tuck under for a garage. So it's set up on a hill, and they had to blast all the rock. And it's really rocky right there. But the home does not feel like it's up on a hill. It doesn't feel massive. It was very well done architecturally, as you would imagine. It feels very nestled, very grounded, both from the color, but also the shapes. And when you're in the backyard, it's just like this really tranquil, quiet feeling. We're actually on camera. Motif was videotaping us, and it was kind of drizzling in the rain. And I was just quiet for a second. And I said, if this was my home, I think I would just sit on the rock during the rain and just like observe like how far this house has come. It was just kind of this really neat moment. And so, yeah, I guess I don't know how else to say it, that a lot of times you build, I think the idea of what Nick's doing is very grand, but I love the idea that this home was very subtle, very approachable. It felt very grounding. When you walk into the home, it didn't feel like it overwhelmed you. It felt like it fit like a snug leather glove that was custom made for you. And so I really appreciate how it made me feel. The other thing that was really amazing was going up. Let's see, I got this note here. The lift and slide doors are impressive. One of the doors is 800 pounds, and you can move it with your pinky. All the windows, I don't think you mentioned what the brand was, but they're somewhere from Eastern Europe. And they're all tilt and turns, so very European style. And then all of the window wood cladding is a white oak, as you would imagine. The name of the home is 45 White Oak. There's a lot of white oak in the house, spoiler alert. But beautiful. Everything's triple glazed, lift and slide, just beautiful execution. But I just love how, obviously I love natural light. So anywhere you can get that much natural light in and also allow you to access the outdoors, it just had a really nice moment. The other thing that we don't do a lot in Minnesota in particular is, the plaster work. We're doing Misu is actually, I love plaster. It's never just really been in my client's budget, or I haven't pushed it hard enough. Now I'm starting to do more plaster than I have previously. But out on the East Coast, especially where Nick is, there's not a house he does where the whole thing isn't plaster. They don't even use sheetrock. Everything is plaster. And especially, he said, in his specific little niche around him, like it's 100% plaster, amazing artisans. One of my favorite moments was actually, there was a gentleman there, I forgot his name, but he came out of retirement just to work on this house. He was so inspired by what Nick was doing. And I think his son owns the plaster company, that he said, I'm coming out of retirement to work on this house. And we chatted for 5-10 minutes. And it was just really, he was so into the nuance and the doing it with a straight, edge on his trowel, and just the craftsmanship was through the roof. It was so cool to watch him work, number one, but also hear him talk about it. Like, I'm just thinking someday of like being retired. I'm just picturing like, the stereotypical retirement, you're on a beach, and like a house would be so exciting. You're like, you know what, honey, I'll be back in a month. I'm leaving this beach. I'm going back to Boston to do plaster. Like, that's a pretty powerful house that would make you do that. So that part was really cool. The other part was the outside porch. Typically in our market, we're doing 4-inch, 5-inch, T&G cedar or something like that, just a very inviting, nice space outside. But their whole ceiling was actually plastered. I really like that. I suspect that I'll be pitching that to my architects and design teams here in the future. I just thought it had a nice, very clean look. I always think of plaster inside. So it's the first time I've ever seen plaster on the outside like that. So that was just kind of something unexpected. The beams, almost, you could do a whole podcast on the episode of the beam. So first of all the wood came from northern France, and Nick flew over there, and I think Madeira is their trim work company. And I don't know that much about them. I'll have to do a little more research, but all of it is single sourced. The way they harvest wood over in France and in Europe is a lot different than they harvest here. Every tree, every cut, where it is in the forest, how many years it's grown, is all cataloged. He said he's actually going to have like a manifesto of every single tree that's in his house, which you could only do if you had sort of the pedigree or the records, that they keep over there in the husbandry of the tree. But they're talking like, 50, 70 foot lengths of wood that are all no seams, single piece. You could never get that here. It's incredible. They're all pre-finished, prefabricated. So when I was here a year ago or 13 months ago, the trimmers and the carpentry, the framers, had actually framed up these spots for backing for the beams. But then to see them all installed was impressive. And if you look on Nick's website, nsbuilders.com or 45whiteoak.com or his Instagram, or we'll have it on our Instagram at some point, I'm sure, you'll see that, these big long sections, call it 50 feet, whatever it was. How do you get a 50-foot beam up there? No splices, but the valance, the surrounding beams around are already created. And he said they take a real thin piece of metal, like aluminum sheet metal, and then they put it on the end, and then they put it on both ends, and they'll have three trimmers will be on the beam. It takes a full day to put in one beam. And I counted the beams. There was 17 beams in the great room and 25 beams in the kitchen. So you're talking about almost 2 months of work days in order to hang all these beams, and they're pre-finished as well. So it's like the craftsmanship and the detail is incredible. So anyway, you have these slip sheets of aluminum that maybe it's 16th inch thick, or however thick it is, as thin as maybe it's foil, I don't know, just so that the wood on the wood wouldn't rub. You put it straight up, and then you slip those sheets out, you finish, nail it, and away you go. But that was just really impressive to see that happen.
Lake Society magazine is Minneapolis' premier target market boutique lifestyle and design publication. It embodies the unique lifestyles and design of the Minneapolis City Lakes neighborhoods. From Lake of the Isles to Lake Harriet, it showcases the best in local design projects by both premier builders, architects, and interior designers in this area. Lake Society magazine has the look and feel of a national publication with glossy covers, high-end finishes. It's mailed directly to upper bracket single-family homeowners in the City Lakes area, and it's the perfect local coffee tabletop publication. Subscriptions can also be available through the website lakesocietymagazine.com. Additionally, publisher and founder Karen Steckel has over 27 years in the local magazine publishing industry and has a passion for high-end photography and quality graphics. Her commitment to quality, visual simplicity, and beauty are strongly reflected in her beautiful Lake Society magazine.
The guillotine door. So in the laundry room, not the laundry room, in the pantry off the kitchen, they had this really cool interaction moment. So you walk in the front door, and there's like this cool dining room. I think that probably the soul of the home is this amazing atrium moment. You have this beautiful, incredible plaster stair. I'll talk about that in a minute. The skylight, directly above with that inverted siding inside on the second level, on the second story. But there's this really cool cabinet that actually opens up, butterflies in, and that would be your dining room hutch. But on the other side is your pantry. And what they did is they had this really cool guillotine moment where in the wall they have ball bearings and a plastic PVC pipe. Honestly, it looks like a pipe bomb in my vast experience of pipe bombs. And it's on a pulley. And so obviously it's perfectly weighted, just one finger up, one finger down. And so I just thought it was really cool, a really neat moment. The stairs, I think if I had to pick like three things, I think the stairs might be for sure in the top three. I mean, probably that whole atrium is all part of this. So that's probably 1, 2, and 3 all in one. Just a magical staircase. He had mentioned that, maybe the whole stair cost $250,000. You're talking, I think, over a month of plaster work on the stair, and all the white oak has no seams in it. Now they've been obviously bending, thin sheets of white oak, and then it's sanded out so you can't see the seams. Incredible craftsmanship. You have to go on his Instagram and on his YouTube page to watch how they made this staircase. I didn't even know that you could do that, or that. So the whole wall basically comes down. It's got this cool shape to it, and it folds back on itself and reverses down into the railing down below. So it's all, I don't know how to describe it hardly adequately. You need to be an architect or designer to use the right words. All I know, it was as impressive. And I think it makes you want to touch it and hold on to it. That's how incredible it was. In fact, the architect was flying in the day after I left just to see the first white oak tread go in, because they wanted to make sure it was exactly how they wanted it. So just really impressive how you get everyone sort of together. They had their trimmers, their plaster guy, Nick was there, their PM. And so just their dedication to make this kind of key element just really sing. It was really impressive. Another thing that I learned was I forget how Nick said it exactly, but if you have two mediums, let's say you have the white oak windows against the plaster, he always likes a little bit of a break, a shadow line. It's a 1/16 of an inch, whatever it might be. And the idea, or 3/8, whatever it might be, just so that you don't try to make everything flush and plain out. Like you kind of want there to be a little break. Like I know in my career, I often like to have things on plane, but I remember an old trimmer I used to have, Todd. He always talked about, having little breaks or little subtle movements. Again, the home is going to move over time. It's going to crack. And by having those little offsets, it really hides some of the imperfections, not on day one, but on year 5, year 7, year 10, year 20. And so you're really thinking about this long term. And so I was just impressed at these little offset gaps. And really, it was just stylistically very intentional. I know Nick was really intentional about, he keeps all the plaster 3/8 inch off the floor. There's no trim in the house. And so he likes that shadow gap. He said, we've played around with it being taller than that, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels like a gap too low, and you can kind of see how close it is to another straight line, where 3/8 was about perfect. It helps hide a little bit of the movement of a floor or of a plaster bead. And so it just keeps that quiet negative space looking really good. One thing that was really impressive was the dining room table. It was 2 pieces of wood. It was I want to say a 6 or 8 foot long table made out of one piece of white oak. And the base was a giant stump that had been turned on a lathe. And I took a video of it. We'll post it on our feed at some point if you go to Mark Williams' Instagram, it'll be on there at some point. It was just impressive. Just 2 pieces of wood. And it looks like a giant, it looks like Goliath carved it with like a little whittling knife. I mean, it's just massive scale, but really simplistic in its outcome and how it looks. But I mean, I think it's those simple, organic, really powerful things that we feel gravitated towards, or at least I do. It had obviously the churn table had been hollowed out on the inside, but it was probably 3-4 feet in diameter. So it's huge. And it was cracking pretty significantly, as you would imagine. So they're going to let it weather. It's been in the house to acclimate now for 6 months or so. They'll leave it there for another couple months, and then they'll actually butterfly tie it back together and fill it with epoxy or whatever, just to make sure it doesn't keep splitting. But it was It was impressive, very impressive. The other thing that was really neat was the roof access tour. It was kind of fun. So you're up on, it's got a flat hip roof and it's got a flat roof up above. So you go up in this little attic. We actually did some video content up there. So we go up in the ladder. I looked at it. He's like, hey, that's our ladder to the flat roof. So you can clean the skylight and go upstairs and clean the gutters. And I look at him. You could just tell I had a twinkle in my eye. He's like, you want to go up there, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I want to go up there. So we went up there, checked it out. And I told them that I've always had kind of like two never evers. One never ever is no skylights in a home that I've ever built. I don't like skylights because my thought on skylights personally, this is obviously just my personal opinion, is that it's not if a skylight will leak, it's when it will leak. And Nick definitely didn't buy that. He's like, tell me why. Why can't it be done? That's what I love about Nick. He'll challenge the status quo. He'll challenge your thought process and doesn't make one person right or wrong. But he's like, are you taking I could see in his eyes, are you taking the easy way out? And maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I just know that I have to warranty a house for 10 years. I'd love for my homes to last, more than 100 years. And if you have a giant hole in the roof, that's a problem. And so, but what was really neat about how he executed it, and Vincent as well from Of Possible, was, the whole skylight was set at an angle, the curb. I mean, it was just really well done. I think, and there's no question that natural light through an atrium like that just makes the home feel so different. So I think in that setting, I probably would be open to it. The other one I told him is my never ever is a window in a shower. And I actually was on a project maybe a week or two ago here locally in Minnesota where the architect had one drawn in. And I said, can we please remove that? The client wasn't super in love with it. So the architect was fine. But again, you're in a shower, tons of water, tons of moisture, tons of, just thermal dynamics happening. I'm like, why are we putting just because you can doesn't mean you should. And there's no question that a wall is going to perform better than a window right there. Even if it's made out of fiberglass or even if it's just bomb proof, at some point, that when nothing is going to last forever, at some point when that house fails, it will fail there. And so that's kind of my feeling on it. And of course, Nick pushed against that too. He's like, why can't you do it? And so anyway, it was just kind of have a healthy debate. Again, I already spoke to this early, but the home has this really calm, cozy feeling to it. I think a lot of it just has to do with the plaster, the color palette. I mean, beautifully designed in terms of room layout. No room feels too big. No room feels too small. It feels like it was meant for you perfectly. You just walk in the home and you feel relaxed. And keep in mind, we're 60 days away from the house. I told Nick, because this is true of every home that I build, that the last 45 days, I'm probably better if I'm just not in town because my OCD nature goes through the roof. When you're 45 days out and you see the end, but you're so far away from the end. One of the other things that was really neat was in the kitchen, they had the front of the countertops, on the range, they had these beautiful Gaggenau appliances, but all the countertops were all marble, but the front edge was probably 8 inches thick. And they actually had laser cut out the knobs for the Gaggenau range. I just thought it was really cool. I'd never seen anything like that before. They also, to reduce the weight, the back side of the island was all marble as well. And all the fronts of all the cabinet doors, I'd never seen this before. The appliance fronts, the garbage front, they were all marble as well. And so their cabinet shop had just basically created a door and allowed for, they cut out the backside of the marble. So if the marble was, say, 1/2 inch thick, I don't measure how thick it was, but they cut back inside of it so you could do a wood panel to lighten it up. But then they'd glue and epoxy that with the hinges. So from the pathway portion, it was all just straight marble. It was really cool looking. I like that a lot. I'll probably try to emulate something like that at a future point. Just very classy. And also super usable. I mean, in a kitchen, you're getting so much. You've got water and liquid, and obviously the marble is going to hold up really nice. Excuse me. The custom vents. It's funny. Lately, vents have been my latest target. For a long time, it was. I have a couple of things that really bother me on my job sites. One of them is a porta potty that's anywhere near my job sign. Another one is outlets. I really like to hide outlets. I don't like seeing outlets if I can avoid it. And then now vents are now in my crosshairs. So seeing how Nick handled all his vents were way above. I mean, pretty much all the vents are custom. And so they would have obviously the ductwork, behind the walls and in the roof ceilings and wall details. But then the trim, the way they finished it, Sometimes it was black PVC and these long linear diffusers. It was just gorgeously done. And I asked him like where he got them from. He's like, oh, no, we didn't get those from anywhere. We made those. And so again, just a commitment to the little details, but I definitely appreciated it and just really loved the execution of it. We had this funny moment where he was showing up he had this hardware for the doors, and he said, pick up this hardware. And the first time I picked it up, I was like, oh, that feels good. You know how when you feel something that's just like heavy, substantial, it just feels like it was made for your hand. Well, turns out this is an $1,800 upgrade on hardware. And there's a company in the UK that had built all this hardware for, I think it was going to be a castle or a hotel or something like that. But then they never built it. And then a company bought the rights to all of this hardware. And that's what this was. But it was just gorgeous. I love the story. I love the weight of it. And it was funny because what he had originally chosen was very nice. But compared to this, it's like the difference between holding plastic and like a lead, a handmade lead cast object or a trophy. I mean, one is plastic, one is like real fabricated by an artist. You could just feel the difference. And I think his comment is like anything that you touch and see in this house, I want you to feel like you've got something just that you resonate towards. And I certainly did. I want to tell this little story. Big shout out to, I'm blanking on his name right now, one of his project managers on the job site. We were talking about, being a brand ambassador. Nick and I both do a lot of stuff with our brand partners and things that we use in our homes. But having people on your team that represent your brand is really cool. And he shared this story at White Oak where maybe 5-6 months ago, he was having a busy day, probably towards the end of the week, probably just fried mentally, a lot on his plate. And his project manager said, hey, I think we should redo this, whatever it was. And Nick was like, nah, it's good enough. It's fine. And so Nick left. And then the following day he came back and it had all been torn out and redone. And his project manager said, I know you said yes, but really, if you had taken the time to think about it, you would have known that what you really wanted to say, no, it wasn't. And Nick was really impressed in that moment. And the guy was right. And what I loved about this story, and it really came out in our podcast, was, Nick has a vision. And I think leaders of companies have visions. I think of somebody like a Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, with like the spaceships or Tesla, like, setting an audacious goal. Like for Elon is to go to Mars. For Steve Jobs, it was to create, this amazing product that would resonate with people's lives. And in, Nick's case, he wants to change how people build a home and what the stereotypes are, like what builder grade is. Like builder grade is, could be a Ferrari, but he loves Bugatti. He had this great story about a Bugatti that I'll share in a minute. And so I just love that his vision is so strong and so clear, and he communicates it so well to the broad public, but really to his own people, that they now are brand ambassadors for NS Builders. And that left a huge impression on me. Like, I know that what I do through the Curious Builder, as well as Mark Williams Custom Homes, like I want to have a clear vision so that other people can share that vision. If you're driving the ship, like thinking about Christopher Columbus going to the Americas at the time, like hopefully, when he was sleeping, the other people who took over and, were steering the ship, had equal drive to get there. Now, it's maybe not the best analogy because they're like, well, we can't go back. We got to go forward. So, or like the example, when you're in South America and you burn the ships, the only way forward, I don't think we want a vision quite like that where we force people into it. But I love the idea that nobody's forcing you to stay in a company. Nobody is forcing you that you have to do this. When you passionately believe, like your brand, your vision attracts people like crazy because they want something to believe in. They want something that they resonates with them. And so seeing his people, I know what Nick believes, but seeing his people also believe it, that was really cool. Kind of remind me a little bit of how you do the small thing is how you do the big thing. And so just kind of this willingness to not compromise on anything. And so anyway, we, after that tour, we were there for probably 2.5 hours, recorded a ton of content. I think Nick's going to post it on his YouTube channel. It's kind of like, when a builder goes and takes a tour with another builder, we see things, through the eyes of someone who's done this for a long time. So I'm kind of curious to see how they market that or what they do with that. Then we went to another project that he's doing with Vincent of Possible, Echo Pond. And that one's much more approachable in scale. and just really neat, simple design. I think if you've been following that project, you'll see it's got these big sheets of Baltic birch that they basically paint in the field with pine tar and linseed oil. It's all kind of a black. And so they do all 6 sides. And it's called, the mega shingle or the super shingle. It's really cool. Actually, we're going to be building a cabin next year, and I'm looking at different siding materials. There's a part of me that says, oh, that'd be kind of cool. I love kind of the natural aspect of it. It's been done a long time, but it was a really neat house. I think it was because it was so approachable in size. It wasn't a very big home and just a really striking lot. So anyway, that was a little bit longer than our normal Thursday episodes, but those were kind of the moments of delight from a tour at 45 White Oak. And if you're interested, again, you can head to Nick's many avenues, nsbuilders.com, his Instagram. You can find it on ours here. We'll be teasing I know we've done a few video recaps on Mark Williams Custom Homes. And then stay tuned. We'll be airing that podcast here in the coming weeks. Have a great week and tune in next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like this episode, do us a favor, share it with 3 other business owners. The best way that we can spread what we're doing is by word of mouth, and with your help, we can continue to help other curious builders expand their business. Please share it with your friends, like and review online, and thanks again for tuning in.